Hello, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome back to Case of Distrust. If you don't know what this is all about, I will leave the link to the previous episode down to the description box below. Long story short, we are a detective in 1920s San Francisco, and we have just got a case. I knocked on the door, but didn't get a response. The latch was undone, so I pushed it open and stepped into the room. The apartment had a sense of cloud, room reeked of laudanum. Let's go. The room reeked of laudanum. Based on the smell, I imagined she'd had enough opium to knock out a horse. Well, alright, let's look around at the Green's apartment. Also, I put up the volume of the desktop audio in this video so you can hear the music a little bit better. Last time it was unfortunately very low, so the grey trench coat was hanging in the doorway. It certainly looked identical to Louis. I searched the pockets and found no identifying marks. It might have been a different jacket, but its recent appearance was off-putting. The bottles on top of the round table were mostly empty. I opened the drawer of the backmost table. In it were 2 train tickets. I mumbled St. Louis to myself, but then came the cackling voice of Mrs. Green. Ha! I forget about moving Connor. He won't budge. I won't budge, sorry. Her head was raised, but her eyelids still remained closed. I asked her further questions, but her head just lolled back to where it had been. There was nothing else she'd say. The ashtray on top of the smallest table was overflowing with spent cigarettes. I found Mrs. Green slumped in her chair, eyes closed, head rocking slowly. "Hello, Mrs. Green," I said loudly. She let out a long moan from the chair, then lifted her head, but failed to raise her eyelids. She tilted her head back to the side, giggled, then let it loll back into place. I shook her lightly, and she moaned again, but said nothing more. Empty bottles were strewn around the apartment. I brought one to my nose and smelled the distant aroma of laudanum, opium mixed with booze, a harsh tonic. A wilting plant was on the furthermost table from the door. I could never keep plants alive either. Even the petals, as the petals fell, they were still vibrant yellow. Anything else here? No. Can I talk to you a little bit more? She moaned and said nothing else. Okay, apparently not. Fine. Let's go to a stable barber's shop. Green had suspected Redstone Stable of sending him that letter. Apparently, Stable owned a barber shop in the financial district. I figured there would be no harm in asking Stable about it directly. I grabbed a taxicab and told the driver where I wanted to go. I thought about talking with him on the way. Let's talk. The driver was an economics student at Stanford, working to pay his room and board. He was an enthusiastic talker, the type of student who had yet to discover he was not the foremost expert on any topic, and he disseminated European politics as though he were preaching unquestionable gospel. I tuned him out, but he kept prattling to himself until we mercilessly reached my destination. The barber shop was down an alley in the financial district, opposite the red brick National Bank. A small bell above the door twinkled as I walked in. Okay, what do we have here? Alright, let's start here. The hat rack was a deep mahogany, engraved with gold lettering that read Fraser and Company Furnishings. The maroon leather chair looked comfortable. It seemed elaborate for a barbershop waiting chair. Two sides of the mirror's frame were cylindrical, painted blue, red, and white to look like barber's bolts. They clashed with the otherwise elegant furnishing. The modern hydraulic barber chair had always seemed ostentatious to me. Ostentatious. There. But this one, with its soft brown cushions and gold embroidery, was the most ornate I'd ever seen. Stable's cabinet was similar to my own, but where mine was dull grey metal, his was deep redwood that looked heavy. Anything else here? No, let's talk to this guy. There was a tall man in the center of the room. He was wearing a flamboyant pink suit tailored to accentuate his stature, with a maroon bow tie and pockets square. I gathered this was Redstone Stable. The man turned to face me. He grinned, and his squinting blue eyes made the smile feel genuine. "I must apologize," he said. "We do not take walk-ins." I asked him for a job, told him why I was there, studied his face. Let's study the face first. I studied his face. The wrinkles around his eyes indicated he was at least 40, but the rest of his skin was clean and smooth. He wore no hat and shaved his head completely bald. When combined with his smooth skin, it hinted at a look of the smart turtle. His pink suit and maroon accessories only added to his eccentricity. He smiled and said, "How foolish of me. Of course, you are here for information, Miss Malone." "Well, how about a drink?" I asked. "How do you know my name?" "Well, how about a drink?" I asked. "To get us started, right?" Stable's eyes lit up and he laughed. "You are completely unlike the other sleuths." He poured me a whiskey and handed it to me. As I gulped it, he asked me why I was there, with genuine curiosity in his voice. "Ask about the note. Let's see. Okay, there. Green suspected Redstone Stable another. Yeah, let's ask about this one. Green claims you bootleg," I stated bluntly. His grin didn't waver in his response. "Would you hang with me on Connor Green's claims? I may partake in some gambling, and I may have a talent for it, but it's nothing illegal, I assure you." "And you know nothing about Green's own bootlegging?" I asked. Stable shook his head. I doubted he would ever answer a question straight. "Well, Miss Malone, will there be anything else?" I pulled Green's note from my pocket and showed it to him, but didn't let him hold it. "Green tells me this letter is from you," I told him. "He doesn't like the threats." Stable lowered his head to study the note, then chuckled. His knowing grin returned to his face. "But this is a Black Hand letter," he said, flourishing a hand towards the paper. "Have you ever seen a Black Hand letter, Miss Malone?" I confessed I hadn't. "Exactly. You should try ring your friend Shipman at the station and ask what it means." Sam Shipman had been one of my uncle's regular partners in the vice rackets. I wondered what Shipman could have to do with Green's case. Stable seemed to think that he had a lot to do with it. I pocketed the letter and continued with my questions, but I made a note to stop by police headquarters and see Shipman. "Well, Malone, will there be anything else?" "Maybe we can get back now. Thank you for your time." "Nothing now," I said, and turned back to the barber shop. Let's go to the police station. I always dreaded visiting the PD after I'd flown the coop, and I was in no mood right now, but if Shipman did know something about Green's note, I had to chase it up. The North Beach station was SFPD headquarters. also poetically baptized the Hall of Justice. The building dominated the corner of Kearny and Washington in Chinatown. Rebuilt after the 1906 earthquake, I thought it looked even more sour than it had before. I strode to the young blonde girl behind the large oak desk. She must have been new because we shared no recognition of one another. I asked for Shipman and she motioned me to a chair as she pressed the pearl button. I sat down and she disappeared through the frosted door. I rolled another cigarette to pass the time. Between the puffs, I thought about my history, the future, shape of my smoke. Okay, let's go with the future. Between the puffs, I thought about the future of the SFPD. The young woman who was working the desk was far from an inspector. I wondered how long my sex would have to wait for that title. It wasn't long before Shipman walked out of the frosted door. Samuel Shipman smiled when he saw me. He had always been helpful to me in my days on the force, and working closely with Lewis, he'd acquired the habit of bouncing theories my way. He judged officers purely on results, and because of that, he was one of my few fans. We exchanged brief pleasantries before he said, "Wouldn't come here for a glad handing." He had a habit of removing the subject from his sentence. "What needs doing?" I explained my case to him. He scoffed when I mentioned Connor Green. "Working for that pinhead. Got a good mind to run him up a flagpole." "I just need to know about his letter." I handed him the note Green had given me and explained its context. After looking it over, Shipman tried to stifle a laugh. "Complete bug," he said. "See this symbol in the corner? Mark of the Black Hand Gang. Except Black Hand letters are always ransom letters, not threats. No foothold in this coast anyhow. Never been one in California." "So the letter is a fake?" Shipman nodded. "Someone trying to imitate the Black Hand." I grunted a sigh and noted what he'd said. "Don't know if Green is getting one over you," he said, "or if someone else is pulling Green's leg, but having more dirt on the man couldn't hurt, especially if he's your client." I agreed. "I've been trying to dig through his past. You got any bunk on him?" Shipman shook his head. "No. From Oakland, it's all I know. But I can do some more digging." I thanked him for that. "Under a pile of wise, though. Might take me a while. Why don't I telephone when I find something?" I had no office where I could receive messages, but I dreaded returning to the station. I told him to call Southern Coffee. "Just leave anything with Franklin Conway," I instructed. He said that was all right. We traded goodbyes, and I went back to the station entrance. Now I knew the letter was fake, and Shipman was looking into Green's past for me. I just needed to chase up the bootlegging lead. I stepped into the streets and thought about where to go. Frankie was still behind the bar. I wondered if Shipman had left many messages for me. Of course, if I was stuck on the case, a long drink with him might be helpful. Ask about notes. I need the password. The Tin Spoon doorman kept me outside the joint. He wants a password, but I have no ideas. Fill full your cups, feel no distress at all your great thoughts shrinking less, he says. Who knew gangsters were the riddling type? Frankie laughed. All our great thoughts shrinking less, he said. What? He turned and grabbed a bottle from his shelf. Vintage stuff this. Strange they'd use it as their code. He handed me the bottle and I read back the label. Fill full your cups. Feel no distress. At all our great thoughts, drinking less. We'll do a good deed nevertheless. Alright, thank you, Frankie. So the password was the poem from this vintage label. Now I knew what I had to say to the doorman. And let's get back. I don't think Shipman has any notes for me at this point. So there we are. I opened the cab door in from the North Beach warehouse with a wooden sign. The sign text was too worn for me to decipher any of its English, but the small grey spoon was still visible below the letters. Let's knock. I again rapped my knuckles on the metal door. The panel slid open and the same dark eyes stared at me. Fill full your cups, feel no distress, at all our great thoughts shrinking less, he repeated. He continued, his stare unwavering. Right, and now I have the password somewhere. I should have it. Yeah. We'll do a good deed nevertheless. Was written, and yes, we'll use that as a password. We'll do a good deed nevertheless. I recited the line that Frankie had shown me on one of his bottles. The eyes squinted. Wait here, came a gruff response. Okay, that was not a gruff voice, sorry. The panel slid shut and I heard footsteps walking away. I rolled a cigarette and waited. After a quarter of an hour, the panel opened again. Bar's closed, but you can shoot Paul in the upstairs room, said the eyes. I pulled the door ajar. He pulled the door ajar so I could see the set of metal stairs. Alright, let's go. I walked up the stairs and opened the thin wooden door in the billiards room. It was much smaller than I'd expected for a gangster's paradise. The only light came from the hanging lamp above the billiards table. The haze of cigarette smoke darkened the room's corners. A couple of tall chairs were placed around the billiards table. The pool table was the focus of the space. The light reflecting from its smooth green surface tinted the den. The room was lit only by the dangling lamps above the billiards table. The rack on the wall held 5 cues. Okay, and then there's this guy. I saw a tall, broad-shouldered man playing the table by himself. Based on Frankie's description, I gathered this was Tiny Paul. Hello, Tiny Paul. I cleared my throat to get him to look at me, then followed with a casual, "Are you ever gonna take the shot?" He stood up straight, rested his cue on the table, and looked at me sideways. It was a petulant look of a boy forced to play with his younger sibling. "Hello," he sighed. His voice was deep, oh yeah. His voice was deep. Apparently Ferry only hired baritones, but it had no gravel. It echoed slightly around the small room. I imagine he could have huffed and puffed the entire block to rubble. "I like watching them," he said, nodding to the balls on the table, "thinking through my options." I'd never shot much pool, but I thought he might like me more if I feigned interest. I considered lying to him, telling that I played a lot. Do I lie or not? Okay. "No better sport," I lied. He didn't seem to like my answer. "Sometimes your broad will say anything to get what you want." Still eyeing the billiards table, he asked, "And what is it that you want?" "Ask for a drink, ask about greed." Let's ask for a drink first. I asked for a drink, mind pouring us each a growler. I hoped getting Paul's lips wet might make it easier to grab something out of him, but he wasn't having it. Paul sighed. "We're closed here. You'll have to come back later." He seemed annoyed at my stalling. "Not now. Okay, well, let's cut to the chase." You like green? I asked. The wrinkles on his brows deepened. "Like or dislike?" It don't matter sometimes. I work with what I'm given. And he's giving us a good lead. I suppose that's why you're here, Malone. So he'd known me too. The doorman must have looked me up. The bay talks fast. Anyway, he said, eyeing the billiards table. You need something else from me. If you want something, better ask specific. Mobsters never failed to grate my nerves. He wouldn't tell me anything unless I pushed him with what I already knew. Okay, let's start with Green's letter. You know anything about this note? I asked. Pulled out the letter with the black hand on it. Tiny Paul looked at the page, then laughed with his whole body. So there is a letter. Green shaking over that. I'm not losing sleep though. Look, Green and I aren't the best pals, but nobody will touch him without protection, and none of us sent it to him, or else I would have known about it. Anything else? Yeah, of course. So you're giving Green the dough? I asked. That's right, he said. We give him the cash to get the supply going. You already gave him the money? Aren't you afraid he's going to run out on you? I asked. Tiny Paul frowned. I suppose you know less than I thought. Well, just to set you straight, that kid's right under my thumb. No way he's getting out of town alive before setting up our score. Anything else? Yes, anything else? Do you know anything about Redstone's stable? I asked. Heard the name, he replied. But why all the gossip? He could tell you more about himself. You won't give me anything on him? No, why would I do that? He shook his head and asked anything else. Well, let's see. Do you know who would fake the black hand? You know Green's note is a fake, I said. So somebody's goofing Green? He laughed heartily. Or maybe Green's just toying with you. Yeah, okay, that wasn't so... Okay, anything else? Tickets to St. Louis, do you know anything about that? I considered telling Tiny Paul about Green's tickets to St. Louis, but if these mobsters thought that Green was about to blow town, they'd be liable to dig him an early grave. I still needed to solve my case, and for that I needed my employer alive. Maybe after it all cleared up, I'd mention Green's tickets. I must have been lost in thought because Tiny Paul said, Gonna get back to this already? Motioning to the pool table. Yeah, okay. I didn't have anything else to say to him, so he cracked his knuckles, arched over the table, and resumed lining up shots. Alright, let's go. Let's ask. I looked at Frankie. What's eating you, kid? What's eating you, kid? Okay, I don't have a wide enough voice range to do all of this, and now Frankie and the mobster at the previous place have the same voice. Sorry, should have thought about that before I started playing this. I sat on my regular stool and rubbed my knuckles on the bar. Any messages, Frankie? I asked him. What do you mean by that? Well, I told Sam Shipman, an old contact on the force, to leave any dirt with you if he had found it. Frankie laughed. So now I'm your bartender and your secretary. Say, if I become your housemaid, will you at least pay me? So I'm guessing you haven't heard anything. I said. Nothing yet, Miss Chief. Shipment's supposed to call you about Green. What have you got so far? No real breaks to speak of, I said. Well, alright. I'll let you know if this shipment gives me a call. I thanked him. What else you got? Okay, well then. Okay. Let's get back to somewhere. Hello. We have some new. Okay. Well, no, not really new things. Tiny Paul, talk to me, baby. Know anything about Green's past? I asked him. He's a local kid, I think. Been around the launch a while. Boss knows him better than I do. I asked more about bootlegging, but all that got me was a frown. Paul refused to give me any new leads on that front. Let's ask about the wine. That bottle on the table, I asked. He said, that's the stuff, a sample from Green's source. I know some Napa wine that smells exactly like it, I said to him. That's so, he smiled. Well, that one's from Vancouver. I had to work every muscle in my face to stop my jaw from hitting the floor. Where is the wine from, Paul? I asked him again. It's from Vancouver, he repeated. Frankie had told me that only Napa grapes had this type of spice. If Paul didn't know this bottle was local, I wasn't going to tell him. But it told me something very important. I had to confirm with Frankie, but if my hunch was on the money, then Connor Green was not getting his wine from Canada, and he wasn't playing square with Tiny Paul. Alright, now we're getting somewhere. Anything else? Paul asked me. I snapped back into the moment and considered if I needed to tell him anything else. Thought I'd just snagged quite a load. No, I think we're done here. Now let's get back to Southern Coffee. Hello, Frankie, my man. Okay, we have here, tiny spoon, wine bottle. Well, you like this, I told him. Remember that wine you offered me? Oh, that's Infandel you turned up your nose to? Where did you say that grape was from? It's from here, California, Napa or Sonoma. You sure? Yes, Malone. That's the only place these grapes grow nowadays. And not Canada? I asked. What are you swinging at, Malone? Tiny Paul had a bottle of wine that tasted the exact same, the identical spice. He said it was from Green's bootlegging source from Vancouver. Malone, I'm telling you, he said, no wine anywhere else in the world has that spice. It ain't from Vancouver and Green ain't getting it cheap. I nodded. Well, you just confirmed my hunch. Green's got no source. He must be swindling Tiny Paul and the entire fairy gang. And I bet he'll run away with the money. Frankie let out a long whistle in disbelief. Just then the phone rang. Frankie picked up with a hello, right, and then handed the receiver saying, shipment. Pacey, he he said, his excited voice crackling the speaker. Find anything on Green? I asked. Nothing, he said. I was puzzled. Then why'd you call? That's the idea. First got pitched for brawl in the ferry building. That was in November 1920. Before that, no Connor Green anywhere around the bay. Strange, he continued. Has trouble staying out of the mess, mixed up in something nearly every week. So only appearing a few years ago, that Oakland backstory is Swiss cheese. What are you thinking? Green's got a different past, I asked. Uh-huh, he said. Guess that he just got here in 1920 and never been straight about where he's from. Wait, I said. If Connor Green was a criminal in another town, easily some cop would recognize the name and send him back home. SFPD isn't that thick. Right, Shipman agreed. If it's the same name, could be his real identity disappeared in another town. I thought aloud. So he might have changed lives. Is there any way to confirm that? If Green fled, the local bulls would keep looking for him, but not if they thought he died. Get these cases sometimes where a mobsters fake death to escape the burg. Use mangled stiff to do it. Someone unrecognizable. That way they get out of town without the chase. Got any mobster deaths in 1920? I asked. A ton. Too many to look through. But narrow the search for me. A town he might be from. I could check specific city archive. Anything in your notes that tells us where he could be from? I'm gonna go with the St. Louis because there was tickets there. I found some tickets to St. Louis in Green's apartment, I told him. The missus was ruffled when I picked them up. I stayed on the telephone while Shipman used another line to call his contact at the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. I was nursing the glass of gin when he got back to me. Lucky break, PC. Seems there's one that fits the bill. He read aloud an article of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch dated October 8th, 1920. Gun battle at June's Diner, gangster dead. Suspected bandit clubhouse scene of another shooting. A heated argument turned deadly Thursday as multiple shots rang inside June's Diner on 14th Street. Suspected hideout of Egan's Rats. A man was found dead at the scene, unidentified due to shotgun wounds to his face. Police suspect he's mobster Greg the Jester, who had hired a private eye to investigate threats on his life. Last month, Chief of Police Brannon said investigating gangster on gangster death was a waste of time, and the discovery of the threats led to believe police won't look further into the case. Hold on, I said. This Bragg character had hired a private detective. Seems police are quick to forget a case if they got a reason to think it's just gangster violence. This lines up with Green, I said. Gets better. Greg's first name? Connor. I cursed loudly through the telephone. I continued with my theory. And your story says this Bragg was deeply in debt? So maybe Green's just waiting in San Francisco until he's got enough dough to skip town and go home. He have some bootlegging business? Shipman asked. Why would he leave that behind? No, I shook my head. His wine is complete bunk. It's local stuff, not any Canadian route he might be claiming. I didn't know why he'd pull a fast one until now. Returning Bragg to St. Louis could be huge. Swing by the station will iron it all out. I agreed and slapped the receiver on its pegs. Well, seemed that I needed to take my way back to the station. Let's go then. So, what's the news on Green? Frankie asked as I was headed up the stairs. Now it seemed like I had all the details. I summarized it up for him. Soda told the rep. Green isn't really green at all. He's Breck, the Juster, a former member of Egan's Rats from St. Louis. He's Breck? Frankie was shocked. But he's been here a while, Malone. Sure, I said, but only since 1920. He couldn't pay off his debts in Missouri, so he faked his own death and moved to San Francisco. He has been longing to go back, but he needs a way to settle his score before he can even show his face again. Is that where his bootlegging comes in? Frankie asked. Uh-huh. Green set up a sham rum running scheme. Well, that's a mouthful. He bought local wine, but claimed to get it at lower prices from Canada. He convinced Tiny Paul to front him a heap of cash for it. Instead of providing a wine, he's planning to skip town with Paul's money, disappearing to St. Louis with enough dough to pay back his debts. He already faked his death once, so he'll do it again here? Frankie asked. That's right. His plan is similar to his last one. Hire a detective claiming he's scared for his life, fake his own death, then know the police won't bother with underground violence. Frankie looked at me with a blank stare. Seems like all the pieces fit, he said. So he just hired you as a cover? I sighed. Seems like it. Don't worry about that, Frankie started saying, but I cut him off. I'm going to Shipman now. I'll sweep away this mess, then come back and see you. Have a stiff drink ready, I instructed. Just be careful, Malone. Egan's Rats have a reputation, they can be ruthless. I turned and walked up the stairs. I stepped into the taxicab and was consumed with my own thoughts about the case. I'd finally caught my break, but it was a dud. I hadn't realized it, but I'd been revealing in real detective work. Once I learned it all was bunk, my mind reverted to its incessant nagging. Wondered if, knew that, wallowed in, what do we wonder? I wondered if I was just a puppet to some two-bit mobster. I was hardly bringing much justice to anybody, which made me unsure of what exactly it was that I was doing. I supposed I was wasting my time. It all came back to the same basic premise. You're failing, my inner voice said. I began to feel nauseous in the car. Mind repeated its last thought. You are failing. But are we failing? And then everything turned to black. Ooh! As if someone had shut all the lights. My naked arms faded into view. They emitted a soft, white glow. I waved them in front of me, leaving streaks in my vision. Between the streaks, it appeared in the distance. I could hardly see, but as the object billowed, a clarity came to me. Then I understood what it was. Lewis's grey coat. I floated towards it. I reached to grab the coat, which was when I saw the needles. No, not needles. Glass shards falling all around me. One piece wedged itself deep in my right elbow, I grimaced, but I was unable to make noise or movements. But then, as suddenly as the rain had started, it stopped. I looked upward with caution, wary of the rain's return, but above me I saw the grey coat. It was no longer billowing, it was rigid, a shield against the terrible rain. It started falling, slowly at first, but quickly it gained speed. It came upon me and enveloped me completely. It was suffocating. I couldn't breathe. I let out a gasp. And then the light. It pierced my eye sockets, hitting the back of my skull like a hammer on anvil. I directed all my energy into my lungs and forced out a yell. That helped. Everything became quiet. I could breathe deeply. I noticed someone beside me. He gradually came into focus. Shipman showed his teeth in a big smile. I looked up at him from my laying position on the Murphy bed. He swung his leg over the chair and sat behind me. "Thought you'd never come around," he said. What happened? I tried to ask him something, but another bolt of pain raced up my elbow. All I managed was a groan. "Relax, PC. Just a few scratches. Quite an auto crash. Flew straight through the front window. They took out a large piece of glass from your right arm." I remember I nodded in agreement. I grimaced as the shake sent sharp pain through my skull. I mumbled the words "auto crash" to myself. I wondered how bad the accident must have been. Why is the cursor moving on its own? Shipman removed a flask from his pocket, unscrewed the top, and handed it to me. "Not the best hooch, but might get rid of the banging in your head." I took a swig. I closed my eyes and sighed a deep breath as its warmth burned down my throat. I knew modern medicine doubted, but that gulp of moonshine helped. I went to give the flask back to Shipman, but he put out a hand to stop me. "Hang on to it. Might need another swig right after what I'm about to tell you." I propped myself up on the left shoulder and listened. "About Green's case. The two of us figured he was going to fake his own death." Shipman clicked his tongue to his teeth and looked towards the floor. "That ain't happening. Last night Connor Green was shot through the heart twice. And now we've got the murderer." "What?" I shouted. The exclamation was impulsive. I swung my legs quickly around and sat on the edge of the bed. My headache had suddenly vanished. "Oh, there," Shipman said. "Look, been here with you all night," he added quickly, "in that chair beside the bed. Just telephoned the station to check in, and that's the rap they gave me. Told them what I'd known from you, and they said they'd chase it up." "How do you know it was him?" Another involuntary question. I was running on instinct. "PC, faking your death involves a mangled body, shot through the chest. His face was still intact. Whatever Green was planning on doing, he didn't get that far. And we looked it up. He doesn't have a twin. That would be too easy." Shipman grinned. "Green hired you for this case," he continued. "Gives you every right to follow it up if you want. That said, he was like to taking you for a ride. Wouldn't blame you if you want to drop it. But I'd like your help, PC. You know the case. Could use your head, even if it's a little bumped. Once you're feeling better, I'll be at the station. Come find me there." Shipman stood up and cracked his back. "Maybe I'll catch some shut-eye on the top of my desk too. Sure beats the chair you got." He turned and walked out. The headquarters building dominated the corner of Kearny, Washington in Chinatown. Rebuilt after the 1906 earthquake, I thought it looked even more sour than it had before. I stepped out of the taxicab and walked through the station doors, ready to chase any leads on Green. But standing in front of me as I entered, bawling her eyes out from the sockets, was Mrs. Green. She saw me and brought her wailing closer. "Malone!" she exulted through her sobbing. "You were working for my husband! What happened?" Her breathing obscured her next sentence, but I got the general idea. I told her I knew as little about the matter as she did, but that I was looking into it, and I was sure the officers were doing their best. She begged me to help them, again drowning most of her sentences with her sobbing. I promised I would try. She took a slow inhale, raised her chest, and walked out of the station. When she was out of sight, Fred Grant came around the corner and let out a snort. Grant was another investigator for SFPD. I noted his wispy hair, more grey and thin than I'd seen it last. A cigar often poked through his mouth, hardening his jaw and twisting his face into skull. I suppose that was an appropriate look for a man who enjoyed the sinister parts of police work. I wondered if he still took his bribes in liquid form. Grant had never been a supporter of policewomen, and he was no fan of mine. He lighted the cigar and said, "The widow seems pretty torn up about him. You're really helping her out." I said I was, and he gave me another snort. "Figures he'd go to you after we told her no." I raised a questioning eyebrow. "Look, the last thing I gotta do is head the tin spoon, then this goes in the freezer." That meant he was about to close the cold case. "You aren't chasing it up?" I asked. He looked appalled that I would even ask. "We've got more to deal with than some dead gangster. The captain don't care about crap like this so long as it's not spreading too far." "And what about the girl?" "What do you expect?" he asked. "This broad goes and marries an Irishman. Probably killed one of his own. Or someday go all those bombs run together." I gave him a frown, to which he responded, "Look, if the missus wants you on this, then that's her gamble, but it ain't gonna lead you anywhere. I don't expect support from the boys. Not even if I find Green's killer." He laughed. "If you get a confession, we'll cop him. Not something the DA can thump his nose at either. They gotta admit three things. Means how they killed Green, opportunity, when they did it, motivation, why they bother. You do that, then sure, we'll be right behind you. But there ain't nobody here looking into it, I promise." He pulled on a cap and walked out. I hurled a glare in Grant's direction, and I was still fuming as I turned down the hallway towards the shipman's office. Shipman was frowning at the stacks of paper atop his desk, but he stood up and smiled. "Glad you made it." I vented about Grant, asked him what he's found on the case thus far. He laughed and mentioned that the paper stacks. "Not in any way related to Green. Piled under the trash now. Nobody's looking into Green's case here." I must have scowled a mean look at him, because Shipman was quick to shake his head. "Not that the case is dead, PC, but Captain has no one on it. Even Grant's coming off as soon as he can. We're underwater with another bunk." "So you have nothing for me?" "Not true. Department still did the regular foxtrot." He tossed me a beige folder. Inside was a large black and white photograph of Green's face. Muscles relaxed and eyes closed. It looked almost normal, apart from his flattened hat behind his head and the dirt and grass behind that. The report behind the picture noted three important clues. First, Green died at midnight the previous night. I cursed myself that I had been so close to stopping it. Second, that Green was killed with two .45 caliber bullets to the chest. Those slugs weren't from a pea shooter's. Green was killed by a mean gun. Finally, that Green was found this morning laying in Washington Square Park. That was the only block away from the tin spoon. I noted each of these facts and gave the folder back to Shipman. "All we got," Shipman said, laying the folder back on his desk. "Can't pinch the gunman if you can't prove the case, but you got to solve it without much support." Don't have time to help either," he sighed. "No point coming back here until you've got your man." I never had much support from the department anyhow. "Well," Shipman said, "at least I'm for you. But listen, we need a confession on this one. Captain doesn't want to run around." "Right," Grant mentioned they'd have to admit to how, why, and when they killed Green. That's it. Prove that, we'll pick them up. Never been on a murder before, right? Can't get tense. Just know, if you accuse someone but can't prove everything, they'll turn like a switch. Might like you 1 minute but hate you the next. Chatting with folks is your easiest route to more information, but won't get any banter after you accuse someone of murder. So be careful who you accuse. Could make your case harder if you go the wrong way. Alright, I get it, I said, and I internalized it. And remember, Shipman concluded, plenty of lies out there, but you can contradict means, motives, and opportunity with anything in your notes. I thanked him and walked out of his office. I stood outside the police station and went over to Mantra. I had to prove the means, motive, and opportunity for anyone I suspected of murder. Once I found all three for a single person, I'd have them licked. I started out to begin the chase. Alright! I'm thinking this is a great spot to end today's episode. Thank you so much for watching this. If you liked it, let me know. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you again next time.